The world of Athelios. Vast, settled, but still greatly unexplored. This world is old, but it doesn't feel that way. There are some cities that are still rich with its original histories and architecture, but this world has had to remake itself twice. The Age of the Dawn Titans. This is the time when the Dawn Titans, also called Primordials, still rule the lands. They were godlike beings made of manifested entropy and elemental energy. They arose from the chaos of the new ever-shifting planes of existence, and they ruled the lands with the same level of chaos that created them. As the creation of the universe was coming to an end, there was one last spark of power. Emerging from this spark were beings of immense power that had the same ability to create, shift, and bend the universe as the powers that created them. Each being represented an inevitable domain in the world: life, light, creation, knowledge, war, trickery, nature, tempest, and death. The chaos and destructiveness of the Titans wouldn't facilitate the growth of life, so the gods waged war on these primal elemental beings and created a clean slate for life to take its place. The gods set out to create sentient life in their new world, each god making something of their own. The gods Krelion and Sehanine made the sun and moon elves, respectively. Moradin created the noble and stubborn dwarves. Arathis, in all her curiosity, created the race of humans. And the platinum dragon Bahamut created the metallic dragonborn, and so on. Some gods created wonderful creatures that would flourish in the world, but some of the creations of the gods were created to be more destructive, like Grumsh and the orcs, or Asmodeus and his devils. What comes next is referred to as the Age of Arcana. The god Krelion, the god of magic himself, decides to gift the world with the power to fend for themselves. As more people became powerful in the arcane, the less the gods were needed. Some, because of this, didn't tolerate the arcane, thinking that the power isn't suited for mortal hands. The Betrayer gods saw this as an opportunity to attract more worshippers by gifting them the knowledge of necromancy, with the premise of returning lost loved ones to life and extending the lives of themselves. The more powerful the worshipper, the more powerful the god. The more worshippers of a god, the more powerful the god becomes. So while some of the more good and neutral deities were losing worshippers, the Betrayer gods, as they were referred to soon after this, were gaining them. The gods of knowledge, good, light, and life discovered what the Betrayer gods were doing and attempted to destroy them. They were unable to kill them, but they were able to lock them away behind something called the Divine Gate. The good and neutral gods chose to remove their physical presence from Athelios as well, as to not twist and corrupt creation with that same lust for reality warping power again. The arcane is still practiced and for the most part generally accepted, but extremely powerful mages like the mages of lore are very few and far between. Things like small resurrections of people who die before their time is rare but generally accepted. Practicing necromancers, those who wish to extend their lives for the rest of eternity, animate the dead with no regard for the victims, or seek to drain the lives of others, if found, will either be put to death or imprisoned for eternity. Undead creatures are to be exterminated at all cost. The particular war on necromancy was led by the deity named the Raven Queen. The Raven Queen was not one of the original gods of the world. Instead, she married the god of the dead, an evil god. Upon their marriage, she killed him and ascended into godhood. The rest of the gods, not fully accepting her, did not give her domain over the dead, but of the transition between life and death, therefore becoming the goddess of death. The War of the Betrayer Gods left most of the world destroyed, but there were a few remaining cities, like the temple city of Vasselheim, which is also known as the Cradle of Civilization, and also the ancient city of Sathir. These two cities are very prominent for how our story begins. The skyship Ortis, departing from the temple city of Vasselheim to the capital of the continent of Isilia, called Korna. The skyship Ortis, dark, rich, Aetherium-infused wood, worn and slightly faded with the passage of time, and the trisails standing tall and proud in its silhouette. A flash of light fills the passenger's groggy, sleep-addled vision, followed by a boom of what sounds like thunder. The skyship lurches and the world falls away and suddenly snaps back into place. As the passengers begin to awaken, they feel the airship rocking unevenly and hear more thunderous crashes accompanied with matching flashes of light and what sounds like cries of battle and shouts from above, accompanied with screams that seem to originate from the lower decks, like the ones that they are currently standing on. The passengers, now startled out of their slumber, decide to convene in the central hallway. There are currently 4 passengers on this ship. The first woman that emerges from her room is a wood elven woman with fiery red hair and purple garb. The next is a sun elven woman wearing dark vestments and a symbol of the Raven Queen. The third is an air Ganassi gentleman with 2 scimitars, and the last is a mature blonde elven man that is most likely a merchant. They all decide what to do. The merchant wants to go check on his cargo, but the rest of the party decides that they want to investigate what is happening on the top decks. They decide to proceed forward together, and they proceed forward to the dining quarters, which is adjacent to the stairs that leads to the main deck. But on their way, they encounter 2 figures in dark cloaks wearing strange symbols around their necks. The symbols are made of almost black, twisted metal with a glowing red gem at its center. Upon seeing the passengers, they scream that there are more down here and that they should be killed. The party acts in self-defense and destroys 2 rather easily. The merchant man, out of fear or wanting to check his cargo, decides to run and bolt down the stairs to the cargo hold. The party, not far behind, discovers something startling upon reaching the lower deck. The merchant man that was just in front of them lays on the ground, what appears to be dead, with black necrotic tendril-like veins protruding from his mouth. The cleric, Harvina, senses something in the shadows by the stairwell. She discovers an assassin, but quickly dispatches of him. With the Ortis plummeting quickly towards the ground, they have to think fast. Geminus, the air Ganassi gentleman, knows a bit about skyships and discovers that there are glide cloths and that they can escape through the loading bay door. As the passengers descend somewhat safely towards the ground, there is something in the forest nearby that watches. 2 figures, one a red-scaled kobold and the other rather undistinguishable, watches in amusement. They discuss between themselves and decide to go investigate these survivors. The undistinguishable feature turns into a panther and carries the kobold with them. To the passengers, they have arrived safely almost to the ground. Most of them got stuck in a rather tall tree, and after struggling for a few minutes, they are greeted by a kobold and a panther, who immediately ask why they're there. The panther transforms into what looks like a red curly-haired elven girl, and they point their daggers at them, asking what they're doing in their forest. The passengers, upon explaining that they are survivors and that they are lucky to be alive, request aid from these 2 denizens of the forest. Upon ascertaining that these people mean no harm, the 2 decide to take them to the nearest city, which is in the north, which is the ancient elven city of Sathir. The curly-haired elven girl explains that she had once met a ranger from this city, and that she knows that they could go there for aid. The curly-haired elven girl introduces herself as Nat. The red-scaled kobold introduces himself as Skort. The fiery-haired wood elven woman introduces herself as Phoenix Rising. The sun elven priestess of the Raven Queen introduces herself as Harvina Lyodon, and the Ergonasi gentleman introduces himself as Geminus. Nat and Skort, not really trusting of anyone, is still apprehensive of these survivors, but nonetheless they make their way northward. They camp for the night, making a nice warm fire, but unfortunately the fire attracts some unwanted attention. 2 direwolves looking for food emerges from the woods. Geminus tries to make one of them a pet unsuccessfully, but the party does end up defeating these direwolves, and the bard Phoenix ends up mocking the last one to death. During the battle with the direwolves, however, Nat was rendered unconscious. Upon falling unconscious, the form on the ground was not that of a young, curly-haired elven girl, but that of a featureless, gray-skinned and white-haired being with clouded eyes. Nat later explains that they are called a changeling, a shapeshifter of sorts that can turn into anyone that they have seen and also mimic their speech. Surprising to them, though, is that the rest of these newfound friends accept them for who they are. Maybe changelings aren't so bad after all. After a long rest, they continue northward to the waterfall that marks the entrance to the path to Sathir. Behind this cascading and roaring waterfall in the northern part of the forest, the party can barely make out the opening to a passageway. As they walk behind the waterfall, they feel the mist on their skin, and they smell the cool, clear water like morning dew mixed with the ever-present scent of pine. They are surprised that the passageway is not completely dark. Small shelves and tiers of glowing fungi line these cavern walls, giving off a pale green, otherworldly glow. The surface that they walk upon isn't just solid stone, but moss and small flowers that cushion their step. They walk along this path for longer than they'd expect, but nonetheless they weave through mountain after mountain, going through open air and crossing over stone-raised pathways, passes and cliffsides that fall at what would seem like hundreds, maybe even thousands of feet below at times. It twists and turns and climbs and falls, and as they walk through the dim tunnels and passageways that run through these snowy and treacherous mountains, suddenly they see an opening. This one is different than the others because instead of just raw rock and stone, this opening is adorned with intricate carvings of columns and twisting vines, and even though, as they get close, the source is not visible to the eye, there is some sort of magic or material that is embedded in the archway that reflects light resembling shimmering starlight. The party descends down the stairs, and upon doing so gets a better look at the city. The city is nestled in what looks like a valley with a bay to its east. It starts at sea level and gradually climbs up to where it nestles in the side of the mountains. The city is made of intricately carved alabaster, which resembles that of lace. As they reach the bottom of these stairs, they find themselves outside of the city walls. Nat, now looking like a young elven girl with black hair and blue eyes instead. They approach the gate and are greeted by 2 guards of what are later explained to be lunar guards, wearing full plate mail with the symbol of the elven goddess of the moon, Sehanine, on their chest. Nat explains that she is friends with one of the Stars Rangers, Riordan Nilo. The Stars Rangers are the ones that facilitate trade between the Sun Elven city of Aaronross, also known as Dawn Peak, and the Wood Elven city known as Etrium. Sathir itself is a Moon Elven city. Upon hearing Riordan's name, one of the guards leaves to go and fetch her, while the other keeps them company. The other guard soon returns with Rhea in tow, a pale, blue-eyed, black-haired elven woman looking like a slightly older version of this new form that Nat has assumed. Nat and Rhea greet each other warmly, and Nat introduces Rhea to the rest of the party. Rhea soon guides them to a comfortable inn and tavern near the dockside. The Silver Minnow Inn, run by Sindrin Serothian, extraordinaire and bartender Black Dragonborn Arzan. The city is immense and established and beautiful, but a few of the party members find themselves not knowing a lot about it. With suspicions raised, Skort refuses food and drink and decides to set off on his own while the rest of the party have lunch. He decides to go next to the docks, where he sees a building where the dockmaster resides. His curiosity piques him, and he decides to look into the door to see if he can find Manifest, to see if there's any shady business going on in the city. Discovering that he can't steal the Manifest without being noticed, Skort decides to attack the Dogmaster. Keep in mind, this is in broad daylight with regular patrols in the area. As you can expect, it does not go well. Skort swings at him, and the Dogmaster swings back, both missing, and they do this for quite a while until the Dogmaster rings a bell in the ceiling, which is meant to be a warning. Lunar guards soon converge on the Dockmaster's small place of work, and Skort decides to jump out a window into the bay. Nearby, upon hearing the warning bell, Rhea bolts out of her seat in the Silver Minnow, with the rest of the party following close behind. Discovering that Skort decided to take a swim, Nat, turning into a dog and jumping out after him, decides to swim in the bay. Rhea also jumps in herself. The chase lasts longer than it really should. Every single time the Skort tries to find some way of escape, something happens where it doesn't quite work out in his favor. Every time Nat tries to grapple him, then it works out in his favor, and no one can seem to get a hold on him. After a while, it's that their dog form is not fast enough and turns into a horse and still attempts to grapple Skort. And Rhea, upon pleading with Skort and him refusing, decides to fire her bow. Skort eventually climbs a ladder to run back on the docks, where, with help from Harvina, Geminus gets the final blow and renders Skort unconscious. At this point, Skort is bound, and the Lunar Guard escort him to the courthouse. The party follows where Skort is taken to see what will become of him. There they meet the first member of the Council of Sathir, Arbiter Valna Arather, a cold woman, but she is helpful nonetheless. With a simple sending spell, she calls for some interrogators to try to ascertain Skort's motives. Soon after, two people arrive. Diviner Castra and Enchantress Phalun. They interrogate Skort with suggestion that he answer all their questions, Zone of Truth to make sure that he's not lying, with Diviner Castra just standing in the corner reading Skort's surface thoughts. They ascertain that Skort was trying to kill the Dockmaster, even though the Dockmaster didn't get a scratch, and upon further analysis of his psyche, deem that he is actually insane. After finishing with Skort, they go up to interrogate the rest of the party. Upon talking with the rest of the party, they find out that they are survivors from attacks from these cloaked figures with strange symbols around their necks, which they have heard of. Apparently, these attacks were more widespread than originally thought, with multiple roads and ships being attacked, not large cities, but things and people that wouldn't be missed. Dawn also informs them that on the night of the attacks, a new red star has appeared in the sky. They're very interested that the party is in possession of this information, and they suggest that they speak to the council about what they have seen. After they are released after interrogation, the party decides to wander around the city. They happen upon the Temple of Ioun, one of the Amethyst Archives, a chain of libraries across the world. They do some individual research, with the most surprising being that of Phoenix. She discovers that a certain black root from the Underdark might be linked to her family's death and the burning of her city. The party goes to rest at the Silver Minnow for the night, Skort in prison, and the next day Skort is transferred to the Temple of Sarenrae. Sarenrae being the goddess of healing and redemption, her temple functions as a hospital as well as an insane asylum. The party awakens and goes about their business during the day, going to get Geminus a pet, finally, a rabbit named Katrina, and eventually going to visit Skort, Phoenix bringing him some fruitcake that she had dropped on the floor during breakfast. Upon talking with Skort, Nat, absolutely furious, they devise a way for him to potentially be released. He needs to, A, apologize to the Dockmaster for his behavior, and B, work off his sentence one way or another. They call in the Arbiter, who comes up with an idea that since the party is familiar with the Ortus and these cloaked figures, that they might be able to help on an upcoming mission. Two of the other Stars Rangers, the twins Callus and Dara, have recently gone missing, going to investigate the Ortus. Dara hasn't been heard from at all, but they did manage to eventually get a hold of Callus, who says that there are strange creatures on the ship and he is requesting assistance. The party goes to sleep for the night, and the next morning at noon, they all meet at the Citadel of Sathir. Upon agreeing to these terms, the Arbiter calls for the Dockmaster to come and meet them there, to which Skort unconvincingly apologizes, but nonetheless it is accepted. And the next day, they are to meet the Council at noon. As noon comes, they ascend towards the Citadel, which is nestled in the cliffside of the northwestern mountains of Sathir. As they approach, they can feel their hearts beating in their throats, and they soon arrive at the gates that guard the perimeter of the grounds. Cobbled streets give way to elegant stepping stones, and the bright noonday sun gives way to the cool shade at the entrance. The massive oak doors, as intricately carved as everything else, are opened before them by two flanking lunar guard. They are instructed to wait in this entrance area, which is where the rest of the party meets back up with Skort. After a short while, they are called into the main chambers, and before them is the Council of Sathir. Sitting high and proud in the center is a high elven woman with deep, rich skin, which is a startling contrast with her shock-white hair. This is Sovereign Etheria Landthraval, as she introduces herself. She also introduces all of her colleagues: the current Master of Development, Changebringer Fenton Lorelei, Master of Arcana, Headmaster and Arcanist Lucan Celeborn, the Master of Commerce, Coin Master Morian Araval, the Master of Law, which they have met before, Arbiter Valna Arather, the current Master of Defense, Guardian Alithar Nilo, which is Rhea's father, the Master of History, Lorekeeper Eladonna Curiel, and the Master of Information, Seeker Veline Alias. They discuss the details of the task at hand, and afterwards agree upon a contract, to which each party member must sign their name in their own blood. The reward for this contract upon completion for Skort is his freedom, while the rest of the party gets monetary value. They are assigned Rhea to accompany them with one other Stars Rangers by the name of Cassius Balefrost. One of the agreements of the contract is that Skort would not leave the eyes of one of the Rangers at any point in time. Luckily, Skort takes an instant liking to Cassius, who he mockingly teases when he notices Cassius's glances towards Rhea. The party is to stay at the Silver Minnow Inn before heading out at first light in the morning. But tonight is the festival of the full moon, the festival to celebrate the Moonweaver herself, Sehanine. Geminus, who did not wish to take part in the contract, at this point in time decides to part ways. Phoenix, however, is getting ready for her big performance tonight. Over the past several nights, to earn her keep, she has been performing at the Silver Minnow and doing quite well for herself. Tonight is to be no exception. After Phoenix's performance, the party decides that they should play some carnival games and maybe win some prizes. They do quite well, but after a night of partying, they all take their rest at the Silver Minnow. During sleep, Harvina gets a troubling dream of a dark, broken ship and a medallion on the floor made of twisted metal and red glowing stone. Her vision takes the form of a bird in flight, and as she nears the medallion, a dark, shadowy hand grabs her out of nowhere, and her dream vanishes. She hears a voice from her goddess, the Raven Queen, encouraging her to pursue this avenue. Her number one enemy being undeath, there is a lot down this road. Skort also has a bit of a troubling morning. As he is stretching and scratching his chest, he discovers a black bird skull. They travel the entire day and make camp for the night. They travel the next day, and upon sunset, they near the crash site. A few of the party members hear something close by, a snap of a twig. Upon investigation, they discover Callus. He warns them that they should be quiet and they shouldn't stay in this area while it is dark. There are certain figures that are looming around the ships that only seem to come out at night. He takes them about a mile away to his campsite where they rest. In the morning, they go to investigate the ship and these shadowy figures. Upon investigation, these creatures are just that, shadows. The party learns a little bit about them, that they are undead creatures, but they quickly dispatch of them. They explore the Ortis, they discover the medallion from Harvina's dream, and a few extra magic items along the way. According to Callus, there are also goblins in the area that they should be wary of. They never go inside the ship, but it seems that they are picking at the scattered wreckage that has fallen out of the Ortis. They go down to the caves to investigate these goblins, Phoenix turning invisible and finding a figure tied up deep within. The ship's mage from the Ortis. She can't quite remember his name, but he is a blonde elven male. They decide to rescue him and fight the goblins. He is freed, and all of the goblins are promptly destroyed. The man introduces himself as Nitzwa. He said that he has seen their missing ranger. He has seen Dara, that she discovered him and saved him, but there were more figures approaching, these dark, cloaked figures. He overheard their conversation as they captured Dara about them taking her to the hideout in the north, in the mountains. The party is able to track their general direction, avoiding some spiders along the way, but there is a storm incoming at the foot of the mountains. The party has two options: take the open-air mountain pass and risk this winter storm, or go the cave route where there might be creatures. Nat strongly disagrees with the cave route, but is outvoted. During sleep, the storm is raging and lightning strikes, causing a cave-in, trapping them inside. After they complete their long rest, they all ascend in the caves. Eventually, after a few hours of travel, coming to an open cavern room, where they discover statues that are unsettlingly realistic. Nat, being from the general area, immediately recognizes this and backs people down the hallway. She explains that these are basilisks, that they should not be looked in the eyes, that they have the ability to petrify people. Upon learning this information, they devise a battle plan, and they systematically kill these basilisks. There were 4 in total, but there was 1 egg, which the party takes to sell later on. The party continues their ascent in these caverns, eventually coming to what looks like a extremely large room. They can smell fresh air and they can see daylight, but this particular cavern has houses and trees and shrubs, and there are birds in flight in the air that seem to be frozen in place, alive but not moving. They investigate the area and find a circular, sunken portion of this cavern. Upon further investigation of the village, the party discovers that as they breathe, the trees and shrubs are breathing with them. Nat, casting Speak with Plants, discovered that these are awakened shrubs and trees, created by druids of the past that remain there as guardians. The party inquires about this circle, which contains statues of a bear, a bull, a cat, an eagle, a fox, and an owl. The shrubs and trees testify that this is a test. Inside the circle, in the center of where these statues reside, is an obelisk that is written in Druidic that translates to "Many have come before us, and many more may fail, a secret given to strong of heart and strong of mind and will. Blessed one with nature's touch, the power to kill or heal. Do of you what is asked, then our way we will reveal. Any who help complete this task, let you be kind of heart. Pride and greed have struck this town, now our wisdom we will impart. Of honeyed words and silver tongue the promise of power corrupts, and nature pays the price of greed, and foul practice interrupts. Awakened now and listening, we let our trial commence, before us each our task complete to help seek recompense. After studying the statues, the party deduces that they are wanting you to perform a particular task related to the attribute of each. Upon completing the druid's trial, a piece of information is given to Nat, a vision of a circle that is hastily drawn in the ground. Upon inspection from Nitswa and Phoenix, they determine that this is the code for a circle of teleportation that leads to an ancient white drake that corrupted the druids that used to reside here. The party makes camp in the druid village for the night, and upon the morning coming, Nat decides to cast Locate Object to try to find the Stars Ranger symbol that is on Dara. Successfully, she is within 1,000 feet and slightly to the north. After many issues with climbing up a bank leading to a platform and a small cave at the top, the party discovers a cave and upon Scort's investigation, finds a slot that will fit the medallion they took exactly. Upon placing the medallion inside of the keyhole, if you will, the party is transported into a well-lit and warm cave. They discover books and papers on various topics, and upon another invisible escapade from Phoenix, discovers more of these cloaked figures with the strange symbols, and discovers Dara alive, bloody and bleeding, but all in one piece for the most part. As the party exits back outside to plan and then re-enters the cave, they are about to lay their attack when something unexpected happens. Nitswa, commenting on some of their foolishness, decides to drop the act. Transforming from the male before that looked like the ship's mage, his form shifts into that of the merchant that they originally thought dead from the Ortis. He explains that he was there to scout the ship for his friends, and that he watched them kill all of his compatriots, and that he wants his revenge. At this point in time, he calls the rest of the figures in the cave, and they battle. The party is holding their own in this confrontation, but Nitswa has other priorities. He grabs most of the books and papers off of one of the desks and teleports away. As the party is fighting the rest of the cloaked figures and ensuring the safety of Dara, a secondary figure escapes with the remaining papers. Upon talking with Dara, after the battle is complete, they determine that they were trying to interrogate her to find weaknesses in Sathir's defenses, to which, unfortunately, she is given away. Phoenix, recalling that they killed 3 cloaked figures on the Ortis and that there were 3 of the shadows, decides to smartly burn the bodies of the people that they just killed. The party returns to Saphir, triumphant in completing their task from the council of finding Callus and Dara. They explain to the council what they have seen, and any extra of these Medallions that they have received, the council asks for, to the party's dismay. However, Valine, who the party had previously met with the council, Nat revealed herself as a changeling and also requested to be of specific aid in any way that they could. Valine Alias is the person in charge of watching Nat and offers them a map with certain locations where other attacks occurred if they wished to investigate on their own time. The closest of these marked locations is slightly north of a town called Alfast, where there was one survivor that wasn't a part of the initial onslaught, a black-furred tabaxi woman, which Valine encourages to go speak to. After meeting with the council, the party takes care of some shopping, and Skort goes back to the Silver Minnow to get very drunk. Upon entering the Silver Minnow, he discovers a figure in a black robe with a black bird skull pendant clasping it. The man asks if he got the message, to which Skort replies that he did, and the man instructs him to go north to the mining district to the Bent Arrow Inn and Tavern and order a raven's talon on the rocks, that he would be instructed what to do after that. The rest of the party eventually joins Skort back at the Silver Minnow, to which they engage in one of the most interesting escapades. They decide that it is time for Cassius and Riordan to become a couple. So the party plays matchmaker, and after giving both sides a pep talk individually, create a couple. Wonderful. Before going to bed at night, Skort is rambling in his drunken stupor and accidentally calls Nat a name that they didn't expect. Skort calls Nat Nadira and offers his apologies for hurting her or not being able to protect her the way that he should. Troubled, Nat goes and decides to sleep in the room with Phoenix, while Skort ends up being dragged into the room with Harvina. Skort wakes up before first light, to which Harvina immediately notices. Skort complains of a headache from being hung over, which Harvina fixes, and then Skort unsuccessfully tries to deceive Harvina that he just needs to go and use the restroom. Harvina doesn't believe him and decides to follow him, and Skort, being desperate, escapes down the toilet and through the sewers to try to get away before any of the party notices that he's missing. Covered in sewage, Skort emerges a couple of blocks away and decides to go ahead and make his way to the Bent Arrow. When he walks in, the bartender takes pity on his particular appearance, and Skort purchases a room and a well-deserved bath. Skort sleeps there for the rest of the night, and the party wakes up to Skort missing. Riordan wishes she could help, but she has been called to lead an adventuring group to go and unpetrify a few of the statues that were created by the basilisk, because upon inspection, one of them happened to be one of the cloaked figures with the strange medallion. She parts ways with her new boyfriend, Cass, and the rest of the party goes in search of Skort. The party, with Cassius in tow, decide that they're going to set off and track down Skort. Before they could leave the Silver Minnow, a bartender man from the Bent Arrow comes to deliver a message from Skort to Nat. The note entails an apology to Nadira and to Nat separately. It's not hard to track down Skort because they merely just ask the man where the note came from, so the party heads to the mining district to see if they can find their friend. Skort, having slept for a little while longer but still woken up early, leaves the tavern. He pays off the new bartender to say that he was never there, and he goes to hide with the other kobolds that work in the mines. The party, a short while later, arrives at the Bent Arrow to discover Skort not there, and the bartender to never have heard of his name. Frustrated, they go and try to seek aid from Valine, being the Master of Information, and on the way to do some research in the library on the bird skull that Nat happened to glance a peek at some point in time, encounters the current Master of Commerce, who seems to be a bit upset. He says that he was supposed to meet a merchant there that was making special prosthetics out of bone china. He thought it would be good for trade, seeing as not everyone can afford the clerics that can regrow limbs. He tasks the party with going to find this missing merchant in exchange for them getting some trusty steeds to aid them in their journey. They discover the residence of this merchant nearby, and entering the house discover that it is armed to the teeth. This person, whoever he is very paranoid. In a coat pocket, they find a business card for the Bent Arrow. The party returns to the Bent Arrow seeking this particular gentleman, to which they haven't seen in a few days, even though he was a regular. Upon exiting the Bent Arrow, they are cornered in an alleyway by the gentleman that they are looking for. He says that someone is after them, that he will get back with the Master of Commerce when he can. The party isn't satisfied, so he throws a black bird skull at them, to which Nat recognizes. They deliver the message to the Master of Commerce, and he gives them a letter to exchange for their horses. Upon further inspection of this bird skull, it triggers a very painful memory in Phoenix. A memory of her father right before his demise. A memory of two figures in black clothes with feather mantles, with the same type of bird skull holding the cloaks shut. They go to the Raven Queen Temple to inquire whether this is part of their religion or not, to which the particular priestess they speak to has heard of a strange offset of the Raven Queen worshippers from southern Kymir, in direct opposition to some of the Yuan tea. As the sun sets, Skort emerges from the mines with the rest of the kobolds. He goes into the Bent Arrow and orders his particular drink. After finishing it, the bartender leads him back into the pantry area, to which they open one of the grain barrels, which does not contain grain, but is hollow and has a ladder leading down to sewer level. Skort discovers on one of the walls, near where the ladder lets down, there is in thieves' cant the word push, to which he enters. He discovers a sort of storage room, but he does discover a figure standing across the way. While focusing on that figure, another sneaks up from behind him, and he is knocked out. Upon waking up in an empty room, Skort hears a all too terrifying and familiar voice from behind him, the voice of his dead father. He turns around to see a mutilated man, once again putting him down and telling them that he's worthless and that he can't even do anything right, including kill him. Skort runs out of the room, absolutely frightened, and bolts into a door to the left, where he is confronted by his, what he thought, dead sister and mother. In the midst of this terror, the illusion vanishes, and he is met in a room with another figure. This figure, looking amused, offers for Skort to sit, to which Skort at first refuses. Skort asks what the purpose of all of this is, and the figure says that they want to play a game and ask him a few questions. Skort obliges and inquires as to what the figure's name is. They introduce themselves as Corvus Aloe. They say that they have a current contract out on him that used to say they wanted him dead, but upon his successful completion of his mission that it has changed. Skort is surprised about the amount of information that they know about him, but the figure does hold up a file that has the crest of Sathir. They say that Skort is sloppy, and judging by the name he said in terror, the name of his father, that he's probably just a killer at heart. His father used to be a part of their ranks, but didn't take death as seriously as they wished. The figure remarks that death is an art form, that death itself isn't supposed to be violent. It is something good and something pure that can only be utilized for certain situations. This particular group, which is called the Rooks, is a particular offshoot of the worshippers of the Raven Queen. The Rooks were created in direct opposition to other thieves' guilds that wantonly killed. Skort once again inquired as to the nature of him being here, fearing for his life, to which Alawi replied that if they wanted him dead, then a well-placed air bubble to his bloodstream would have been much less work. Instead, he saw potential and wanted to see if it was actually true that their current employer remarked that he might be useful in the future. They asked of Skort's motivation and what his greatest wish was, to which Skort replied that he wanted revenge on Nitzwa for his betrayal. At this point, Corvus Alawi remarked that that is one piece of information that they have not been able to obtain. Information about these strange cultists that have done so much damage and caused so much needless death. Skort inquired as to who had hired the Rooks to take him out or to pursue him further, to which Alawi replied that the first person was the dockmaster, whom they deal with quite often in transferring some goods from one place to another. Alawi remarked that they should be thanking Skort, that up to this point the dockmaster had been hesitant in working with them, but as a favor, they had been much more cooperative as of late. The other one is completely classified, but remarked that the symbol on the file should ascertain the nature of the second person with the contract. At this point in time, they are interrupted in their little game of chess. Another member of the Rooks comes in and says that they finally found him. Upon hearing this news, Alawi is delighted and escorts Skort into a different room. In the center of this room is a pool of crimson. The room smells of iron, and there's candles lit around. They have a figure kneeling over this pool with two other Rooks flanking at his side. A certain merchant that had been dealing in bone china. Alawi inquires to Skort whether he has seen any homeless or orphans while in Sathir, to which Skort says he hasn't been paying attention. Alawi explains that the Rooks always take in the unwanted and unneeded people in society and gives them a place to stay and teaches them to make a living for themselves. Unfortunately, recently, they have been disappearing before they could get to them. Alawi says that this man kneeling over the pool is one of their merchants, and that they discovered that recently he has been finding these people and disposing of them before the Rooks could get to them. The man kneeling over the pool laughs in their face, saying that after his father died, his mother had to resort to interesting means of income. He says that the Rooks killed his mother because she was dealing in human trafficking, but that the Rooks took him in, not wanting to blame him for the sins of a parent. He says that death is the only true freedom in this world, and that he'd rather them be free in death than be one of the followers of the Rooks, that his special bone china wasn't just regular china at all. Alawi asks Skort if he thinks that this man deserves death, to which Skort replies yes. Alawi agrees, and as a test asks Skort to be the one to kill him. Alawi is testing Skort to see if he is as ruthless as his father was. Skort says that he would quickly and efficiently deal with this person, that the extra screams and suffering weren't really worth it. Alawi instructs Skort on a way to cut the vocal cords first, before slitting his throat, to which Skort does. Upon completing his test, Alawi makes Skort an offer. They, the Rooks, want information on these cultists, while Skort wants revenge on Nitzwa. Alawi promises to help in this revenge as long as Skort joins their ranks, so that he can be taught the proper way of killing, so that he will not be a disgrace to thief kind. Skort agrees upon Aloe asking whether he wants to be a rook or merely a pawn in life. The party, having given up their search for Skort, goes back to the Silver Minnow for a night's rest to set out early in the morning in the direction of Alfast to find this Tabaxi woman.